Hey everyone, my name's Cara. This is my main channel where I primarily talk about witchcraft and paganism stuff. I also have a second channel where I occasionally remember to make time to play games. It's newer, I'm working it into my schedule, and that's actually related to the topic of this video. Because in this video, I want to talk about how I am setting up my schedule in 2026. Now, if you know that I used to be a stage manager, you probably think I'm really good at organizing and scheduling, and here's the thing, I am, but I'm so much better at doing it with and for other people, I really struggle to do it for and by myself. I've talked about this before in relation to being a solitary practitioner versus now I do a lot more things in groups and in community. But as a solitary, it was always very difficult for me to keep things in my plans that really only affect myself when other stuff comes up. If I have a plan in place, I fully intend to do it, but then life happens. Other things come up, something needs more attention more immediately, or whatever the case may be. It's really easy for me to just toss aside those things that are just for me. I'm the only one who's affected by them, so I can just change it. And that is true, I can always change things up that only apply to me. But often what would happen is that I would then keep pushing something off and never get back to it. So I've joked for years that I need a stage manager for my own life, or that I need to be my own stage manager, and I need to be my own personal assistant. I don't have one of those, it's just me over here. Solo creator. So similarly, when I am working with other people for other groups, I'm on a number of other teams, I'm in working groups with other community members. If I am planning classes for reclaiming and those are co-taught, I always have at least one other teacher there with me. For those things, I have meetings in my schedule, and I know that somebody else is going to show up in that space to do that work, so it motivates me to also show up in that space and do that work. And obviously life happens, sometimes you have to reschedule things, but 9 times out of 10, or even more, even like 95, 98% of the time, when we schedule stuff, we show up, we get it done. So it's not that I forget that I have other things that I need to do for myself. They're always in the back of my mind that I need to make time to do this thing. I have this thing to do when I have time. Next time I have some free time, I'm gonna work on this thing for myself. And let me tell y'all, that has not been working. I've tried in the past to do the thing where you time block and you put specific times, blocks of time in your schedule for things. It's a very common thing that people recommend for folks with ADHD and executive dysfunction, trouble with motivation. It's even more recommended, I think, for people who forget that those things exist if it's not on a schedule somewhere. I don't forget they exist. I very much know they exist, and it continues to bother me every time I don't get around to doing them because I don't have time because of all the other things that I'm doing. So in 2026, something that I have decided to try, because I don't just want to maintain the things that I'm already making time for, I want to make sure that I'm adding in making time for these other things, including recording videos, editing videos, and doing my own personal study and reading, personal practice, all those types of things. I have decided that I'm going to try a sort of loose time blocking. This makes sense to me now in my life because I do have so many meetings with other people that I put on a calendar. And I know that I've set that up with that other person if it's on my digital calendar, and I also then copy it into my paper planner. I'm not like carrying a paper planner around with me anymore, and if I am out and about and I make a meeting, I'm much more easily just going to pull out my phone and make that schedule appointment right there digitally. But I just also like having a paper planner, so I still keep one, and I like to copy things into both places, and I also make more notes in my planner about what I actually accomplished or more details about those things. So the fact that the thing is happening is in my digital calendar, and then my paper planner, I might also kind of use it almost like a hybrid journal, but it's not my journal. I have a separate journaling practice. Let's not even get into that. But anyway, since I've gotten in the habit of doing that for things that I need to show up for with other people, I have decided to try to actually pick some time blocks for myself for the other things that I need to do. But figuring out how to do that was incredibly overwhelming because I have a weird sleep schedule, for example, so I don't always know when I'm going to be able to reliably be awake. So I can't necessarily time block something that's really early in the day, or so I thought. But I also don't know that I'm always reliably going to be awake enough later at night, even though I do tend to be up really late, to do something that requires a lot of mental function, like reading a nonfiction witchcraft book that I'm reading for study. I don't know that I will always reliably be able to focus on that really late at night. Maybe I would rather focus on something else later at night. So I just really didn't know like where to put these things and how to make it work. A lot of this obviously depends on what I have going on at the time that does have meetings with other people. I have some standing meetings, so it's always going to depend what I have going on at the moment that works for other people. So when it comes to just me, I'm like, I don't know, I could do any of these things at any other time. So here is what I've done so far. I started with my reading goals for this year. I have a personal theme of the year, and I am going to be really vague about all of this in this video because I want this video to be a little more evergreen than it would be otherwise. I want this video to stand as non-specific to what I'm doing this particular year as I can make it. So I'm going to reference general things, but I'm not going to say specifics. So that 5 years from now, this could still make sense. And it could be something that I replicate from year to year, even with a different theme, different specific books, different meetings and classes going on, stuff like that. So I have a theme for my year. I don't always do a theme, but in a year that I've got a theme, pick a theme. And then how do we want to start that year for that theme? So I have chosen various things from my TBR, my to be read list. And that is both digital, things that I have access to as ebooks and audiobooks, and physical books on my shelves. I went through and I pulled out a number of things that fit a subject matter that I feel fits my theme of the year that I would like to start with. And I'm sure I'm going to do other things throughout the course of the year, but there is a topic area that I wanted to start with. So what's a goal and a topic that you want to work on this year? Maybe you're learning more about gardening. Maybe you're learning more about cooking. Maybe you want to learn about witchcraft history, whatever your thing is. And then if you're like me and you have a bunch of stuff already bookmarked somewhere to read, or you already own a lot of books that you haven't read yet, maybe even what you do is go through the books that you have and find a theme emerging from them and create a little unit for yourself based on that. Like, oh, I have 3 books about this same topic. Let me read through those. So yes, I have a lot of books at my disposal. I went through and I selected a number of audiobooks, which are all a bit shorter, ebooks if I didn't have the audio, and a few books off my physical shelves that I want to make it a point to start reading in the first half of the year. I don't know how long they're all going to take me necessarily. Well, I'll walk you through the process of how I figured that out too. But I'm not doing this as like quarters. In the past, I have broken up my personal theme of the year into quarters. I think this is going to be more like half of the year for this year. But in another year, I might do it in quarters, I might do it in thirds, whatever makes sense. So I've just picked a bunch of stuff. I'm like, here's all the stuff that I feel is related to this topic at all, or that is not directly related to the topic, but it's something that I've really been wanting to read. I know that it's going to take me a long time, and so I want to start working it in now. And here's what I've done. So I have an ebook that I'm reading on my phone right now. And because I'm reading it on my phone, it's a lot easier for me to just pull it up and read a little bit at a time here and there. So what I've functionally been doing is that when I first wake up or before I go to bed, and I have a red light filter on so the blue light is not as much of an issue, and I have it in like a more vision-friendly color format, so it's a lot easier on my eyes when I'm reading at certain times. Believe me, I know all about that stuff. There's built-in filter in these too. But I will read a couple of chapters or sections of this ebook because there happen to be pretty short sections. So I can get through 1 or 2 of them just as I'm waking up, when I'm starting to feel awake enough, but I don't want to actually get up out of bed yet, I'll read a couple of chapters and then I'm ready to get up. And then I've already read 2 chapters of something that I'm reading. Immediate win. Now, I don't always do that, but it's really nice when I can. Sometimes I read a little bit in the middle of the day. If I just notice that I have some time, I can pull out my phone, read a little bit in my ebook. So ebooks tend to fit into my schedule that way. So I don't have a specific time for the ebook that I'm reading right now. And most of the audiobooks that I've selected are like 5 or 6 hour long listens. So I know that I could read any one of those in a single day that I kind of have a day off. I don't have a lot of other stuff to do. So I'm saving those goals for the next time I have like a random Sunday where maybe I just want to sit and do some crafting and listen to a book. I'm going to listen to one of those 5 or 6 hour books. And maybe I don't listen to it all in one day. Maybe it's a Saturday and a Sunday. Maybe it's 2 Sundays in a row. Something like that. I don't know. But I know that in the past, books that are around that length, 10 hours or shorter, I have listened to 1 in a day. Especially if I'm not also planning to take notes on it, if I'm just planning on listening. Novels, I just listen to here and there. I don't have specific time for them. But if I'm listening to a nonfiction book that I might want to stop and take notes, then it depends. But that's the plan for those. So they're not specifically on the schedule, but there is a plan for how to work them in. So what's actually on the schedule? The things that are hardest for me to actually make the time to sit and read are the physical books. And this did not used to always be the case for me. My ability to focus on physical book reading has changed drastically over the last 6 years. It started during lockdown. So audiobooks have been really helping me. There are some that I will listen to the audiobook and read the physical book because listening to it helps me focus on it and kind of make that time and space for it. But there are some books that I have a physical copy of and I don't have the audiobook, or maybe the audiobook is honestly slowing me down sometimes. I speed them up, but still. Sometimes there's a book that I just have it in my hands and I have to read it that way. And I'm glad that I can. I am a person who can do that. It's not difficult for me in a physical sense. It's difficult for me in a motivation, concentration, focus sort of sense these days. I have 3 physical books that I really want to try to get through reading. Those are the books that I have chosen to put on my schedule, to block out time, because I know that I need time to sit and get into the headspace to do that work in a way that I don't have to do with the ebook that I just pull up and read a few pages and here we go. But deciding where to put them in my schedule is a whole thing. Sure, I can look at my schedule and I know I have free time on these days right now because I don't have meetings, and that's a great starting point. But beyond that, I might still have a lot of options, and so I decided to narrow it down by connecting the books that I'm planning to read with their magical correspondences and the day of the week that matches that association. So we're getting into a little bit of magical timing. I happen to be reading books about magic, but I think that this would be also cool to do with anything that you're trying to schedule in if it doesn't have to happen on a certain day, and if you have time on those days available. I think that it would be cool to layer on that association, and that's exactly how I approach magic too. There are days that are best magically for certain things to happen, but if you just don't have time on that day, you do it on the day that you have time. So that is still very much the case here for me too. And again, since I want this to be applicable in the future, I'm not going to talk about specific books, so as an idea, if I'm reading a book about moon magic, I'm going to see if I can fit that into my schedule on a Monday, because Monday is the moon's day. And if I'm doing something that I associate with learning about success, or something that I'm studying that I feel will lead to my success, maybe I try to fit that in on a Sunday. It's the sun's day, and I associate that day with magic for success. If I'm reading something about love or beauty or self-care or anything else that I associate with Venus or Aphrodite or Freya, I might put that on a Friday, which is Freya's day, it's Venus's day. I have a series of a couple blog posts talking about the magic of the days of the week, so I will link those in the description, but basically there are a couple of different ways that we can see clues to what the days of the week were named after. And one of the ways of looking at it is actually Anglo-Saxon deity names, and another is after the planets, which I learned from the French language. The names of the days of the week in French are things like lundi, Luna's day for Monday, or in English, it's Monday, Moon Day. Saturday is Saturn's day, Sunday, the sun. And the rest of them are more connected to the deity names, except in other languages, they're more connected to the planet. So another example would be if I am doing anything that I'm reading about or studying something that is about communications, I might try to fit that in on Wednesday because Wednesday is Mercury's day, and that is revealed in the French name of the day, Mercredi. I'm learning Italian, but I'm honestly blanking on all of the Italian names because I first learned them in French in high school. So that's the connection that my brain makes. I think it's still similar though. It's like lunedì, martedì, mercoledì. Anyway, those are some examples. So that's what I did. I picked a day of the week that I felt like I could associate with the magic theme of each of the books, and that's how I helped decide for myself which book am I going to put on which day, because otherwise there's just too many options and it was overwhelming. And again, it does obviously depend on when I actually have the time. So for example, I picked a certain day of the week for one book that I've been doing for the last 3 weeks, and I've been mostly keeping up with this so far for the last 3 weeks, by the way. I say mostly, I should just say I'm keeping up with it because part of how the system works is that I know I can shift things, but unlike in the past where I just keep shifting and shifting and shifting and shifting, because I'm trying to do it weekly, so I've picked an amount that I plan to read every week, I know that I can't just keep shoving it off because by the next week, I want to be moved on to the next section of the book. So I know that I can move it within a day or two, and I have had to do that. Last week, I had a really busy day with meetings that ran a lot longer. There was stuff that came up that really needed to be done that was time sensitive, so that completely ran through my reading time, so I moved that to the next day. But the next day, I also had a number of things going on, and I ended up having to move the reading to another day after that, but I got it done on that day. So I did make sure to still get it done. I'm not just infinitely pushing it off, but I do know that part of this process is the time that I put in doesn't have to be rigid. I may have put a couple of things in at 2 p.m., but maybe something else comes up that day, or I'm really not feeling well at that time of day or whatever, and so I know that I can actually put it later in the day. So last week I was too busy on this day, and then I was busy the next day, and I had to read the chapter that I was on 2 days later. Okay, great. But the other 2 weeks I was able to read it on the day that I had it scheduled. However, I'm looking back at my schedule now that it's been a few weeks, and I'm noticing, right now, with all of the current things that I have going on, that day of the week is pretty busy. So yes, I have time at the end of my evening. If I don't get the reading done earlier, I have time after my last thing of the day to do it at night. But I'm not confident that I will always have the brain power to focus on this particular book that late at night. So I'm looking and I'm noticing, the day after that week was also busy and I had to move things around. But most of the time, like if I scroll down in my calendar, I'm looking toward the future, most of the time, the day after has a lot more space right now, based on all my other meetings. So I'm thinking, even though I picked a day that I feel works best magically, right now maybe it doesn't work best in my schedule. Maybe it would actually work better if I just change that day of the week for that book. Maybe I will be more reliably able to do it that day. And then my really busy day that it used to be on, then I just don't have to worry about it on that day. It automatically gives myself a little bit more space on a day that is currently a little more busy for me. And you know what? Because it's me, if I decide to do that, there's actually also a magical connection for that next day. So it's really one of the only things that I could have, I'll just tell you it is a history book. So in that way, it's pretty broad and there are ways that I can associate it with multiple days of the week. So if I really want to stick to that, there is a totally normal and reasonable connection magically for the other day of the week as well. But ultimately, like I said, you just got to do it when it works. So I'm considering shifting that day. I have not shifted it permanently on my schedule yet, but we'll see. And thus far, it's working for me in that I don't just shove it off like, I'll get to it, and I'm not really intending to, because now I'm really intending to, and I'm really liking it because I've set it up for myself that I'm getting variety because I'm changing between different books throughout the week. I'm not gonna get bogged down in just one like I've done in the past a lot. If I'm struggling with one book, it's been really hard for me to get through it sometimes because I'm just in a rough patch with it. So there's built-in variety this way because I know every few days I'm not worried about going back to that same book. I'm picking up a different one. This is the day that I'm reading this thing and I get to work on this thing now. Treating it a little bit more like it was for me in school where I have certain classes on certain days and I'm not just doing the same thing all the time. So when it comes time to do it, I actually want to do that reading. I'm looking forward to it because I haven't read any of that book in maybe a week. And this is also part of the plan that I have days that I don't have assigned reading. for myself. So I either don't have to do any reading that day, or I might choose to just listen to an audiobook of a novel that day or flip through the ebook that day, but not do anything else. Or maybe I'm really enjoying the current section in one of these books and I choose to read a little bit more of it. Great, I'm not telling myself that I can't. The whole point is that I want to be excited about actually doing this. So far, it's working that I am actually enjoying doing it. I'm wanting to get it done. So if I have to move something because something else came up, great, but I'm going to be realistic about where I can next put that in my schedule. And up to this point, I am on schedule. I am where I thought I would be with all of these. And I will talk about how I decided to break down what my expectations for myself are. But I also want to add first that yesterday, so after doing the reading part of this schedule for a few weeks and seeing how it fits in, I've just been seeing how that goes so far without having to add anything else yet, even though I knew there are other tasks that I need to add into this process. I was just trying to see if it would work for the reading to start with. So now with 3 weeks of that in the books, in the calendar, successfully in the past, a little proof of concept for myself, just yesterday I finally went in and added in time blocks for recording videos and editing videos. And it's not necessarily going to be weekly for the videos. For now, I've put in a weekly time slot, but it might take me more than one of those time slots to work on a certain thing. Not really recording. I'm going to record this in less than an hour, probably. But editing takes about 3 times as long as the thing itself is. So it might take multiple editing sessions if I'm really trying to keep myself to a certain time block, because I have other meetings that I have to fit it between, and also time for meals and attempting to sleep normally, right? So I have to kind of, again, be realistic with myself about where can I fit in these things. So it's not to say that, oh, all of a sudden I'm going to be back to having weekly video releases. Very much not the case. But I'm putting in time for working on those things. And we'll see how that goes. If it ends up being every other week recording time and weekly editing time, because I need more editing time than I do recording time, that's just true, and how that's gonna work with my main channel and my second channel. So it's an experiment. I have only just added those things into the schedule, and I am indeed recording this in a block that I set aside for recording. Look at me go. But yes, full disclosure, at the time of this recording, I only have evidence that I know the reading part of this is working for me so far. Let's hope that it holds for adding in all of the other things. So how did I determine how much I'm going to expect from myself each week? How did I decide this was going to be weekly? What part of it is going to be done each week? So here's what I do. I do this every time I read a physical book now. This is not just a new thing that I developed for this year. I've been doing this now for years. It's just the way that I have to do it for my brain, but it has also helped because I've also facilitated book discussion groups and guiding other people through reading books in a group, and this helps a lot for that too. So what I do is I open to the table of contents. I look at how many delineations there are. Is it in chapters? Is it in parts that separate the chapters into groups? Is it in sections? What's going on with the actual format of the book? So if it's a book that the author has put into part 1, part 2, and part 3, and each of those parts has a number of different chapters within it, then I could look at the parts as a whole, or I could look at individual chapters, or both, depending on how long they are. There are some books that are really quick, and so even if there are multiple chapters in a part, maybe that entire part is something that I know I could do that in one day. And so then a 3-part small book becomes a 3-day read. That has happened for me before with certain things. Or if I'm wanting to work in a group with it, maybe I do look at how many chapters are in those parts. How can we fit that into a schedule where people can meet? So I often do things like that on an every other weekly schedule. Most people cannot meet every single week for something like that, but bi-weekly seems to be working fairly well most of the time, or maybe you fit that into a monthly. But in this case, this is my schedule. I'm only reading for myself. So I'm looking at the amount of parts and chapters to see just generally, is there something that feels like it would immediately make sense? If something has 12 chapters and you just want to read it that year, can you do 1 chapter per month and then you've gone through the whole book in the whole year. That could be really nice and easy if you just want to get a little bit of reading in. Or, shorten that math. Say you want to read it in 6 months. Can you do 2 chapters in a month? How do you know if you can read a whole chapter or 2 chapters or 3 chapters in a month, Cara? Well, how do I know? For myself, I look at how many pages it is. So I will literally go through the table of contents and I will do the math. How many pages is each of these chapters? Are they 5 pages long or are they 50 pages long? That makes a huge difference. I cannot commit to a 50-page chapter every week. I just can't. I know that that will not work for me. So because I've been a reader for so long and I have kept track of these things for a while, I know about myself that I can get through, and this is including if I'm stopping and taking notes about a book. If I'm just listening to a novel, that's, relatively much easier because I'm just listening. But if it is a book that I'm doing like for study, that I am either planning a discussion around or I'm using it for teaching planning or anything like that, or if it's even just for my own personal study, if I am taking notes on it in any way, or I'm gonna stop and interact with the text in that way, highlighting it in the ebook, making notes digitally or physically, I have to include that because that's different than just the amount of time it takes me to read words on a page, right? That's how much time am I sitting with a text and how many pages of it am I getting through in a sitting before I have to get up and do something else. I have to move, I have to whatever. There are some books that I can get up and walk around with while reading, but there are some books that are heavy and awkward to hold, so I prefer to just be seated reading them. It really depends. There's lots of accommodations, sit, stand, desks, things like that. It depends. Many factors, but most of the time I am sitting with a book in my lap, on a lap desk, or similar situation. So I know in that circumstance, I can get through a 20-page chapter in one sitting with relatively no problem. I can go up to a 30-page chapter in that situation sometimes. It depends on the book. 40 pages is probably too long for me to expect myself to get through in one sitting. So I try to go for 20 to 30 pages. I could knock that out in a sitting. And what I consider a sitting is usually that's going to take me an hour and a half to 2 hours. And something else that I'm doing throughout this process this year is I am actually going back and changing my schedule to reflect how long did it actually take me to get to the point that I wanted to get to that day. So I will have more information about this going forward. I will have more data about how long it actually takes me to read certain types of things in these certain contexts. Okay, so you don't have to be doing all of that. You don't have to be the biggest nerd in the room. I got you. At least when it comes to this. You can be a bigger nerd than me about other things, and I'm sure that a lot of you are. We all have our things that we are huge nerds about. Congratulations, we're all the cool kids. But I am fully aware that as I'm saying some of this, some of you are like, bruh, can you not? I am not doing all that. And you don't have to, is the thing. You don't have to. This is what makes sense for me. If it is helpful to you, give it a try. If it is not, I sure hope that you find something else that is maybe a similar finding your own process that is not exactly this process. The point is that it has to work for you. But that's what I'm figuring out, and I'm excited to get better at my reading again because it used to not be a thing I had to think about, is the thing. I used to just read books. Now I have to think about it a lot more, and I have to think about how many pages I can read at a given time, because otherwise I just can't do it, and I won't do it, and I want to read. There are hundreds of books that I have on my shelves, physically or digitally right now, that I really want to read. So I have to make the time. I have to make it work for me. So I count up the page numbers of all of the chapters. I know approximately how many I can get through in one sitting. And then I look and I see if I want to consider a sitting a block of at least 2 hours. Maybe I take less than that. So far I've been taking less than that most of the time. But I need the buffer zone, right? I need that space because I want to make sure that I don't feel rushed. So if I want to do it weekly, do I have 3 2-hour blocks throughout the week that I can dedicate to my reading time? Yeah, great. So that's a good start. I can actually put in the time schedule-wise weekly. What does that look like translating it to the book? It depends on how long each chapter is, but if, for example, the first chapters are like 10 pages each, cool, maybe I can read 2 chapters in my first week. Maybe I'll get through 1.5. I don't really know. But I look at how many of those there are. So we've got 20 pages, 22 pages, 24 pages. Great. Those are all easy, one sitting. Let's just call those a week each. But then maybe there's a chapter that's 50 pages. And I'm like, okay, that's going to be at least 2 sittings because I'm at least going to break that into 25 and 25. So that one chapter is actually going to be 2 sessions, which in this case for me might be 2 weeks if I'm only doing one in a week. So what I decided with my current reading goals, the actual books that I'm looking at right now, one of them, for example, it doesn't have like 18 chapters, but it has 18 of those readable time blocks for me. Maybe it was like 16 chapters and 2 of them were longer, so I'm splitting them into 2. I don't remember exactly what the math is. But if I know that it's got 18 blocks of time worth for me, I put that in my calendar as a recurring every week for 18 occurrences. And when I get to that point, if I realize, oh, I actually need 2 more weeks, I'm just going to bump that up and I'm going to duplicate that on my calendar for 2 more weeks. And then I'm going to have that book read in 20 weeks instead of not at all. So that feels pretty good to me. So instead of me trying to like read one book over, what would that be, 6 weeks if I was reading only that book in those 3 reading sections, I would be reading it 3 times a week. Every week. I could read that same book in 6 weeks if that's the only one that I'm dedicating to those times. But for me, that's been hard because if it is a book that I get to a part that feels difficult and I'm not excited about going back to it, then I'm more likely to put it off and then I just get stuck and I don't let myself move on to something else. So the way I've decided to do it, just having one thing on a given day of the week and letting them all take longer, but reading them on their own day simultaneously, that works a lot better for me right now because if I do feel like I'm getting stuck on one, I'm only ever reading it for a couple of hours at a time max until the next week. And then I've got all this other stuff in the meantime. And if I'm liking it, I can read more of it, but it's like, oh, if I'm feeling it's difficult, then I'm like, all right, I just got to get through this chapter. I've got 2 hours to do it. We're going to get through this chapter and then that's going to be done. And in 2 days, I get to read something else and maybe I'm excited about that other thing. So I'm liking that a lot. I used to just read one book and try to finish it as fast as possible before I move on to the next book, or I would try to choose like a fiction and a nonfiction to read at the same time, but I would never really have multiple nonfiction going at the same time. I learned in the past that it's really hard for me if I'm reading multiple witchcraft histories at the same time, because a lot of the time they cover the same information, so then it felt really like I'm just reading the same book over and over, and I was getting confused about what I had read in what book or the other because there was some overlapping information. So I have learned not to do that to myself anymore. They have to be a little bit separate. So yeah, so there's one book that I'm reading that's going to be over like 18 weeks, and there's another book that's a little shorter than that. I think I'm going to finish that one in just like a little over 3 months. It's like 14 or 15 weeks maybe. And then there's another one that I know is going to be a big, long read, and I'm going to want to take my time with it, so I'm not too worried about it being done anytime soon. It's gonna take me most of the year, and that's fine, because that is my plan. My plan is just to read it by the end of the year, so I can really spread it out and give it time. And so far, this schedule has been working, so at this rate, I think my initial idea of the schedule, I will have it done in, it's like 7 or 8 months, I don't remember exactly, most of the year. But that's fine. You know, there's no reason I have to read that book in 3 months. I don't have an externally imposed deadline. This is for me. I get to choose. So it's great. And in this case, I'm listening along to an audiobook of this one, so I know how long the audiobook is. And so instead of even confining myself to chapter divisions, I am actually planning my time with that book by 1 hour of listening time. Because I'm going to pause it, I'm going to stop, I'm going to take notes, I'm going to be doing a lot more interacting with the text, and I might go back and reread things. So my goal is not to finish a chapter at the end of each week's session. It's just to get through an hour's worth of the audio version of the text. So treating that in a very different way has been interesting and helpful for me so far as well. And again, sometimes it doesn't take me the whole 2 hours to do that, but it also means that I could sometimes decide to keep going and get a little ahead into the next section or whatever. So I'm really enjoying it so far, and I hope that adding in the other things will go as smoothly as this has so far. So this is really one of those things that you might think when there's not as much going on and I have more free time, it'll be easier to do all these things. But it's kind of not. It's kind of easier when I have other things on my schedule because then I know that I have to plan around them. So there are fewer options. When there's just kind of a bunch of empty space, it's easier for me to procrastinate, push it off. Yeah, I'll just do it later. I don't really feel like it right now. Or I want to take a little bit longer sitting downstairs with my cup of tea, so I'll push that off later. And I can still do that now. And I do still very much do that now. But there's always something else on the other side that I know I have to fit between, and that helps. That helps me with the stage managing portion of the brain. Even though I can always create my own self-imposed deadlines, those don't work as well for me, and they never did in solitary practice because I know that I can push them wherever they're not real, basically. But if I know that I have 5 hours between now and my next meeting and I was gonna read now for 2 hours, but I know that I could take an extra hour and still have time before that meeting, that's the kind of wiggle room that I'm enjoying. And if it turns out that I can't get it done before the meeting, but I don't have anything else after that, I can move that till after, and I can do that. So far, so good. I'm really enjoying it. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling good these days. You know, the mood always comes and goes. It's just part of life, just part of how it goes, dealing with mental stuff, you know. So I am under no delusion that it will always be this way, and it's just, I figured it out and it's gonna work forever, but I'm feeling good about it, and it's working really well so far, and I'm very happy about that. So I wanted that to be the first topic I talk about this year. The year in review has been posted. It's only February and the year in review is already up. Who am I? Go check it out if you haven't yet. And in the rest of today, I'm actually going to be working on editing the rest of my Barrow Hill playthrough and maybe playing the last section of it and then editing that. So on my second channel, you'll see the final episodes of that series hopefully in the next month or so. So maybe go and catch up with that playlist if you have not seen my playthrough of the first game, then coming into the sequel. You might enjoy that if you enjoy pagan-themed things, which I'm guessing if you're here that you might. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Give this video a like if you liked it. You're here at the end of the video, so I'm guessing you may have. More information, my website, how you can get a tarot reading from me, all kinds of links are in the descriptions of my videos. And on my website, there's also a bunch more there, so go check that out if you're curious at all. So thank you very much for watching and or listening to this video. I will see you next time. And until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye for now.